Hola, buenas tardes a todos. Bienvenidos a Planetario. Bueno, ya sabéis que hoy tenemos unos invitados muy especiales, no solo los que tengo aquí a mi lado, sino también mucha más gente que ha venido desde Estados Unidos. Y principalmente han venido, luego os lo va a explicar Bobby Jones, que es el asociado, digamos, el administrador asociado, deputy, bueno, en inglés Deputy Associate Administrator, y que es un poco, digamos, el segundo de a bordo de Kathy Lueders, ¿es ok? Y bueno, voy a comentaros alguna cosa. Vamos a pasar ya al inglés porque, dado que ellos vienen y son bastantes americanos que han venido, vamos a hacer toda la presentación en inglés. Luego, al final, si queréis hacer algunas preguntas. Ellos principalmente han venido porque esta mañana han estado con el rey, nuestro rey, inaugurando unas antenas o una antena en Robledo de Chabela en la estación que tiene la NASA aquí en España. Entonces, bueno, voy a comentar alguna cosa ya. We pass into English just to say some words about Kathy Lueders. She was named Associate Administrator for NASA's Space Operation Mission Directorate in 2021 and was selected by former NASA administrator to lead the Human Exploration and Operation Mission Directorate in 2020. She assumed her current role when the agency announced in 2021 that they separate into two different directorates, the space operation as well as the newest exploration system development. She's working closely with the team as the agency organizes its exploration programs for the next 20 years. Since 2014, Lueders has directed NASA's efforts to send astronauts to space on private spacecraft, which culminated in the successful launch of the Demo 2 from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida in May 2020. Lueders began her NASA career in 1992 at the YSN test facility in New Mexico, where she was the Shuttle Orbital Maneuvering System and Reaction Control System Depot Manager. She later moved to the International Space Station program and served as Transportation Integration Manager, where she led commercial cargo service supply services to the space station. Also responsible for the NASA oversight of international partner spacecraft visiting the space station, including the European Space Agency, the Japanese Aerospace Exploration Agency, and the RAS and Roscosmos. Finally, she went to Kennedy as acting commercial crew program manager in 2013 and was selected as the head of the office in 2014. Lueders has a Bachelor of Business Administration in Finance from the University of New Mexico, and also a Bachelor of Science and Master of Science in Industrial Engineering from New Mexico State University. So she's got a very huge education, a background, and I will pass the word to Bobby Jones, the Deputy Associate Administrator, to illustrate more about their visit here to Madrid, to Spain.
Gracias.
Thank you very much. I want to show some pictures of this morning. Las habéis pasado ya, ¿no? Okay, vale, okay.
Well, good evening, everyone. I will be talking to you first in English, then I will move to Spanish. So if I sound not so Spanish, so please forgive me. So ladies and gentlemen, honored guests, and dear friends, once more we come back to Spain to celebrate success. And in celebrating our success, we are celebrating the historical relationship that exists between the Kingdom of Spain and the United States, and in particular, the relationship that exists between NASA and INTA. For over 6 decades, the Deep Space Network and the station that we have here in Robledo de la Chavela, and I'm hoping that you all had the opportunity to visit, has been supporting all sorts of NASA missions, from the moon all the way to beyond the edge of the solar systems. And the center has been bringing a lot of scientific data. They conducting research into deep space. And the scientific data that we collect are for the benefits of humanity, at large, not for a specific country or specific group of people. It's to serve humanity, to expand our knowledge. This has enabled our humans to extend their reach to well beyond Earth. And hopefully, in the future, we'll be able to extend our reach to the stars and to well beyond the interplanetary systems. The Deep Space Network has 3 main ground stations. One is located in the United States in Goldstone. One is located in Canberra, Australia. And one that's located not far away in Robledo de la Chavela. Between the 3 of these stations, they provide full coverage of the sky, 24 hours, continuously collecting data from missions flying in the geosynchronous arc sometimes, but primarily missions that are flying well between between the heavens, all the way to beyond the edge of the solar systems. Recently, we have undertaken a major effort within the space communication and navigation environment to add additional capacity to our communication infrastructure to primarily support all of these, a whole set of new requirements, and in particular, the human exploration that Kathy will be talking about, in particular, the Artemis Program. 3 years ago, we started this effort here in Spain, and we challenged our folks in here to build 2 additional antennas. And then COVID hit. Yeah, COVID constrained the movement of our folks. We had to protect our operational folks because we wanted to maintain continuity of operation. So we designed a very rigorous protocol for the access and the interaction between the various member of teams, ensuring we have enough redundancy, and whatever a particular team get infected, we isolated that team and we got the other team to take its place. So the support was going on around the clock. And despite all of the challenges, in particular the pandemic, the team has came through thanks in large part to the leadership of both INTA and ISDEFE. They really worked very hard to deliver these systems a little bit, late, but still successfully delivering those both systems, DSS 53 and DSS 56. And they have already entered the operational phase, providing support to deep space mission, and pretty soon they will support the human space flight mission to the moon, all the way on our way to Mars. So to all of them, I really would like to give them my thanks, my gratitude, and I would like to congratulate the team and the management of that team here at the station in Robledo for a job well done. So now I'll pick up in Spanish. And that's okay if you laugh a little bit and make some gesture. Spanish is not mi idioma principal, I speak it because my wife made me. My wife is of Spanish background and origin, and every now and then she tests me, and I got to pick it up. She helped me write these words, so I will be reading from the text before me. Damas y caballeros, honorables invitados, estimados amigos. Una vez más, and that's exactly the translation almost of what I said in English. Estamos de vuelta en España para celebrar el éxito. Estamos celebrando nuestros éxitos y, sobre todo, estamos celebrando la relación histórica entre España y los Estados Unidos, en particular entre el Instituto Nacional de Técnica Aeroespacial y la NASA. Por más de 6 décadas, el Centro de Comunicaciones del Espacio Profundo, localizado en Robledo del Chavela, ha apoyado todo tipo de misiones de la NASA que van más allá de la Luna al borde del sistema solar. Este centro ha estado realizando investigaciones recopilando datos científicos para el beneficio de la humanidad, lo que ha permitido a los seres humanos extender su alcance más allá de la Tierra. Y esperamos en el futuro extender ese alcance aún más allá de las estrellas y el espacio interplanetario. La red del espacio profundo tiene 3 estaciones de seguimiento principales en sitios clave alrededor de la Tierra. Tenemos una en los Estados Unidos, en Goldstone, California, una en Canberra, Australia, y la tercera, sumamente importante, muy cerca de aquí, en Robledo de la Chavela. Recientemente hemos realizado un esfuerzo mayor por ampliar nuestra capacidad de comunicaciones, el añadir antenas adicionales de 34 metros a través de toda la red para facilitar las comunicaciones entre las misiones del espacio profundo, así como apoyar el regreso de los seres humanos a la Luna para hacer escala rumbo a Marte como parte del programa Artemis. Durante los pasados 3 años, las compañías españolas, bajo el liderazgo del INTA y de SDEFE, Ingeniería de Sistemas para la Defensa de España, han estado trabajando arduamente para añadir 2 nuevas antenas a la red. Pese a todos los retos, en particular a la pandemia, que ha limitado el movimiento de todos, pese a estas limitaciones y desafíos, la labor se ha realizado exitosamente gracias en gran medida al excelente liderazgo del INTA y de SDEFE y del empeño y magnífica labor de nuestro equipo aquí en España. Quisiera extender a todos los miembros de los equipos mi más profundo agradecimiento y gratitud. Como mencioné, estas nuevas antenas, la DSS 53 y la DSS 56, estarán apoyando el regreso de los seres humanos a la Luna en futuros viajes a confines remotos del espacio sideral. Ahora quiero presentarles a la líder responsable de esta iniciativa, mi jefa, Kathy Lueders, la administradora adjunta de la NASA para operaciones espaciales, quien es responsable de asegurar que definitivamente logremos nuestro propósito. Únanse a mí para darle la bienvenida a la señora Lueders, quien les hablará acerca del futuro del programa Artemis, entre otros proyectos.
So unfortunately, my husband's Irish. So I don't have this hidden like a key to be able to have my key translation. So you're going to have to put up with me doing this in English. So I apologize. And I was going to start out this evening with a greeting in Spanish. And somebody, where is she? She said, you need to say buenos tardes. No, buenos tardes, buenos tardes. And I said, buenos tardes, isn't that like good afternoon? And she goes, I said, this is after 7 o'clock. Isn't that buenos noches? And she said, you're in Spain. You're in Spain. Buenos noches doesn't happen until after 10 o'clock. So, okay, I got it. I'm on U.S. time. It's like after 7, it's like starting to get night. But in Spain, you're just starting at 10 o'clock. So I've learned that. So thank you all for being here. I really, really appreciate it. It's so exciting to see everybody come out here and want to hear about space, because I'm obviously very excited about space. So what I'm going to try to do is run through charts and then try to give you all as much time as possible to just ask a bunch of questions, okay? So I'll get started. So future of human space flight, and I think what's really, really cool about this is we are acting like this is just a given. And I'll talk about this in a little bit, that, you know what, we are going to the moon and we are planning on going to Mars. And I'm not going to tell you exactly the date, but I'm telling you we're going, okay? And we're going. And it's through us wanting to go that we're going to be achieving great things as we get there, okay? So what a great day I had today. You guys got to see all those pictures. What an amazing day meeting the team. This is a team out there that, like Vajri talked about a little bit, that brought on a new antenna. It's going to be an antenna that one day will hear people from the moon. It will carry the signals from our astronauts on the moon down here. And they will be here and they will come through Spain. And so I just want, those signals have come to Spain before from the moon, and they will continue to come to Spain in the future. And so, and every day, messages from Mars come to Spain. And so it is just think about this. There's no data, there's no mission without the data that's coming through Spain. So just think about how important you are as we're moving forward. I'm going to go through a little bit of background and talking about what we're doing and just how important it is for us. NASA does not do any missions anymore, just with NASA. NASA does it as a team. And this international collaboration is key for us to accomplish our missions. And then I'm going to talk a little bit more about what the Deep Space Network is doing, continuing to do with communicating for our moon to Mars. So we tend to show our missions through the rockets we fly, you know, unfortunately I've been telling everybody over today, I'm spending way too small amount of time in Spain. Unfortunately, I flew in yesterday and I'm flying in tomorrow morning, and that's a huge shame. But the reason I'm having to fly back so early is because we are getting ready to roll out our Artemis 1 vehicle tomorrow evening out of the KSC. And there's this huge building called the Vehicle Assembly Building that the whole stacked rocket's going to be starting to roll out to the pad. And we're doing what we call a wet dress, which is kind of one of the final tests we do before launch to kind of check out all the systems, all the loading systems and everything else. And so it's bigger than the Saturn V, and that's shown in that picture there. It's huge. So I have to get back for that. I do have to get back for that. But I've told everybody I need to come back and spend more time in Spain. But it's really the things that we fly in space that are also super important. And so I also show on the side there how it's how we work together. Like we are really looking at how do we set up the space platforms that we have out there to continue to collect data for us to continue to push out and explore further. And so you see some of the things there with International Space Station. Obviously, James Webb, we're getting ready to do our first flight test this summer, and Cassini. I keep wanting to say next slide, and I got the clicker, so I'm in trouble. Okay, well, that'd be fun. It'd be fun to tell Badri to do something. So NASA space operations, what does it include? So I sometimes, somebody told me the other day, I think you have the hardest job in NASA. But I actually think I have one of the coolest jobs in NASA, because if you can think about it, we have all of the humans, I get to have all the human spaceflight portfolio underneath me, along with launch services, along with SCAN. Badri gets to work for me, and just an amazing team that every day is making things happen. And so very, very, very proud of the team we have and the collaborations we have and the chance that I get every day to be able to work not only with the NASA team, not only with our industry team that we have, but with all our international partners. Next slide. So one of the things that, and I kind of alluded to it a little bit with the launch operations, but really what we're trying to do is establish a set of platforms for us to figure out how to learn to live and work in space in the most cost-effective manner. And so people don't realize that here on Earth, we are doing space operations. So I already talked about the communication network piece. That's critical for us to do space operations, operated here on Earth. We do a lot of studies related to crew health that we operate here on Earth. Our mission controls are here on Earth. We do a lot of other scientific activities getting ready that are here on Earth. So when that terrestrial column and the platforms that are there to get us ready to fly in space are a very important part of our platforms. And then we are establishing low Earth orbit platforms. We found out with the International Space Station, you can test out a lot of things in LEO, in low Earth orbit, that can get us ready to be able to, and are a lot cheaper to test out in low Earth orbit than if you have to go test this out on the moon or on Mars. So for example, we've over the last 20 years been gradually getting and developing ways that we can keep our crew members healthy as they do long duration flights. And then when we bring them back to Earth and they are what we call deconditioned because they've been in microgravity for a long period of time, we actually do, when those people land, they don't get to rest. They actually have to run through a whole battery of exercises that we do to test out different protocols to see, okay, how if you landed as a deconditioned crew member on Mars, would you be able to pick up a tool? Would you be able to do this? Would you be able to go do this activity? And so those people are kind of like the perfect test subject for us to be able to use, and they're here on Earth, which is the cheapest place to do this research for us, right? So the International Space Station not only does research in that micro-G laboratory, and also is a test bed for our commercial providers and a test bed for us to check out technology that we need to have to be able to go to the moon and Mars. But it's also it's a place where we can have people go on orbit for an extended period of time, and then when they return, we have a way to kind of test these protocols that will make sure that when we do send people to Mars, which will be at least a 9-month mission there and doing activities once they get to Mars, that we are sending them along the way with a set of protocols and processes that we know that they will be able to accomplish the missions that they need to accomplish when they get there. And then we are right now, like I already talked about, we're right now getting ready to get our gateway going and to be able to set up our orbiting platform around the moon. another platform that we have, and then laying in place the key pieces that we need to have to be able to operate on the moon. So we're really looking at what is all the technology and the science that we need to be doing in each of these platforms, and using the right platform to buy down risk before we go into the next platform. So a very, very, very thoughtful process that we're going through. Next slide. So International Space Station, it's just an amazing thing. I've worked in the International Space Station program for a while, set up the cargo capabilities for the International Space Station, then in the Commercial Crew Program, set up our ability to fly crews to the International Space Station off of U.S. soil. An amazing, amazing feat of international collaboration. I just am so proud of this endeavor. And when you think about it, that 250 individuals from 19 countries have visited the space station. We're getting ready to, we have 3 cosmonauts flying up this Friday on a Soyuz. We have 4 of our first private astronaut mission providers going up early April, including I think there's a famous Spaniard, Mike L.A.'s flying up in early April on the Axiom 1 mission. And then we have our Crew 4 folks flying up in mid-April too. So we are using the International Space Station as a destination for us to be able to continue to grow the population of crew members that we have going up into space. The space station is an international endeavor. Over 100,000 people, every state in the United States, and 16 countries. I mean, thousands of investigations and investigators, and we have, every increment has about 300 investigations that are going on. So I think one of my favorite facts about the International Space Station, and it's something that's near and dear to my heart, is engagement of students and people that want to be interested in math and science. And so the fact that we can touch 1.5 million students in the United States with our activities on the International Space Station, I think is one of my favorite facts that are out there. And for Baudry, that we would not be here, and for me too, because you're in my directorate, but we would not be here without obviously continued support of our network here. So I talked about Mars, I talked about the moon. We all know the International Space Station, key support for this is here in Spain. Next slide. So I already, what's really, really important for us is that we continue this relationship. So the International Space Station has been such a great international collaboration for us. And it's one of the things that I'm most proud of starting out as a HEOA was we signed our agreements for the Gateway MUA with ESA and JAXA for us to continue that international relationship as we moved into activities around the moon. Because this is about us continuing to explore in an international way. And those international, I tell everybody, it's like we are now, when you're in space and you look back on Earth, you realize we're all on the same spacecraft. We're all on the same spacecraft. And so it's us doing this together and working together and continuing to figure out how to do this together. That's going to be, I think, going to give us kind of the most for our missions going forward. So Artemis, this is one of my, Artemis, there was Apollo, and for a lot of us in NASA, Apollo was like this kind of this great thing that happened with the agency, and we went back to the moon. And when we began starting to look at going back to the moon, it seemed very, very fitting to start looking at what do we need to talk and how do we need to talk about the program that's going back to the moon and going on to Mars. And for the portion of the mission that's going back to the moon, we decided to call that the Artemis Program. And the thing I love about it, first of all, is it's named after a woman. I think that that's very cool. So the Artemis is a sister of the Apollo. And it's also showing that we're going back to the same place, but it's also about going back now where we were going back based on almost a space race. We're really wanting to go back now for humankind and as a team. And for how do we go back together in a way that we can further what we can gain from a science and technology perspective as for humankind. And so we're beginning to lay in the path and working with our international partners on how do we lay out what we need to be doing for Artemis program going forward, heading into exploring and beginning to buy down then risk and understanding for our missions going forward. Next slide. So I already talked about the first vehicle that's on the pad. And what we talk about Artemis 1, we have to realize even our very first mission for Artemis is an international mission. The service module on the Orion is an ESA, and it is called Bremen. Every single one of the service modules are named, and the first service module is named Bremen. And if you just look at it and look at all the different activities that are there, along with the science missions that are going on off of that first mission, you realize how we are trying to have the Artemis program be not only a national endeavor, but an international endeavor. Next slide. So the next slide just kind of lays out the key contributions that are out there in each of the areas. And, I think you realize that across the board, obviously I already talked about the service module, but when you look at all the different places that have contributed, it's really, really, to me, impressive that this, and we are building up to it. When you start looking at Gateway and the other missions coming forward, you'll see even more contributions going on with the international community. But the fact that the first uncrewed demonstration vehicle could have this much involvement, to me, is very, very exciting. So I always tell, when I first came into the job, I told Badri, I said, I realized, without communications, without data, and what do you say, Badri? It'd just be a bunch of expensive tin cans. Like that would, but okay, pieces of junk up in space. If you don't have communication, if you don't have data coming down to the ground, all those spacecraft would be expensive junk up in space. So I'm sure everybody else, all my other people that work for me are going to be sending me nasty emails right now. But it is very important, though, that we rely on the data that comes from this network. And not only that, but the data that we can also use for commanding. And as you know, systems we're becoming more and more where the spacecraft are autonomous, or that you're really wanting to be able to have ground control of activities. And so that data rate that Badri was talking about, that data rate and that need for that data is just going on, not only for Deep Space Network, but Near Earth Network. And in fact, those lines of those networks is becoming more and more blurred as our needs grow. And so it's just an extremely important time. Data and the commanding and positioning and all these key activities are really what enables us to do these missions. Very, very important. Next slide. So I love this because it shows how these missions, there's no way, when you look at missions, I do not own this nice little slice of Earth where I can make sure I've got communications 100, or 360 degrees all the way around the planet to be able to ensure that I have this capability. It's why space is really the place where we need to operate peacefully together, because we need each other. We need each other so that we can have that communication capability. It's really, really important. If you look at it and you look at where we're going, guess what? We're trying to cover the world. We're trying to cover the world because that's what you need to be able to have a robust communication systems with your spacecraft and be able to make sure that you're giving as much data and telemetry and getting data back from the spacecraft as you can. And that requires a lot of collaboration from all of our partners. Really, really hard work for everybody to work together under different models, under different governments, under different agreements, and for us to make it happen with this kind of a relationship, but all with the common goal of serving this need. Next slide. And I love this chart because it shows how complicated it can be to make sure you have coverage with your key missions. You know, this is for Artemis 1, for the mission that's coming up in the early summer time frame. You have to realize how complicated it is to make sure that you've got all these different tracking stations, ground stations ready to go, to be able to make sure that you can be able to connect and have comm with the vehicle along the way, to be able to do critical commanding, critical communication, get critical data down, and to be able to accomplish a mission. Artemis 1 is actually one of the most, I call it our shakedown cruise, because we're not only launching a vehicle to the moon, which we haven't done in a really, really long time, but we're also doing an orbit on the farthest side of the moon, 45,000 miles on the far side of the moon, to be able to then come back and releasing 11 CubeSats. And so we're doing a lot of things. Yes, it's an uncrewed mission, but it's a 4 to 6 week mission where we're gonna have to manage comm on this mission and make sure we get all the pieces done. And we're doing all of these activities to make sure that before we put crew on the vehicle, we've really understood how this vehicle is going to interact with our communication networks, how we're going to be able to get data so that we make sure that we can operate it in the right way and learn from that operation with it uncrewed to be able to, when we put crew in there, that we understand what the limitations of the network are. But you can see it's not easy. You know, I think we were talking to the engineers today, and the King, I mean, there's so many things that people do all the time, and they make it look easy, but it's not easy, right? But what's really cool about it is that when they're given a new problem, they go figure out how to go solve it in a way that you can show that we can get it done. And then Artemis 2. Artemis 2, we're going up, and we're not going to spend 46 weeks because the great thing about having an uncrewed mission is we don't have to worry about E-class consumables. I have a robot going on, and if you guys look at it, I think there's an interactive Google thing going on that we'll be able to go do, but when you put crew on, then you've got to go worry about the limitations of your ecosystem. So that the Artemis 2 mission will probably be about a 7 to 8 day mission. But it will be a key checkout of the rocket, the spacecraft, the communication systems, going and flying up to 4 crew, and making sure that for that demonstration mission, we've checked out all the systems that we need to do. Because the next mission that we'll be having after that will be with our lander, and we'll be looking to do our human lander demonstration on the moon after that mission. So we've got to make sure if you notice, we're checking out each of the big parts of the vehicle and the system to make sure that before we do the next step, before we do the next complicated activity, that we're continuing to burn down risk. So for all the data needs that we need to have for Artemis, which is considerable, if you start thinking about, and what's really important is it's not just data needs for Artemis, it's data needs for Artemis without impacting our Science Mission Directorate. So when you look at the number of missions we have today, and the number of missions we have around Mars, and what the and Thomas Zubukin, who's our science mission director at AA, he's thinking up new missions all the time. It kind of, I can see Baji probably is already starting to rub his head here, a little nervous about this, but continuing to think about all the things out there and every time you put new missions up there, one of the great things is that when you add missions, you also have to add capability, right? So we are right now, actually, I feel like we're in a transformational period with our communication networks. And we saw today kind of the first phase of that transformation with the new antennas coming in at the facility here. But we're in the process of doing additional 34-meter antenna upgrades, and then we're adding 18-meter antenna subnets, and then we're in the process right now of contracting for lunar relays and looking at the potential for building new lunar relays in-house, because we know that we need to be able to start building a robust lunar network, not only for our activities actually, but also working with our ESA counterparts on their activities that are bringing up and trying to create an interoperable network of capabilities that will also serve our commercial providers that are coming on. We have commercial lunar landers that are actually in the process of landing on the moon within the next year and a half. So interoperability is really, really important. I think, you know, sometimes rockets and spacecraft and all these other, that's a sexy part of space, of like us, space exploration. But really the really important part of space exploration in a lot of cases is making sure things fit together and work together. Because you can't be a team unless you're all playing by the same rules and because you don't know how to play together. And so one of the key things, you know, we had in the spacecraft realm developed some interface requirements for our docking systems and our communication, our radios. But it's also very, very important that across our communication networks, we also have this interoperability capability. Because what would be really good is if we're individually setting up relays or we're setting up communication capabilities, that we'd all be able to use it. And just like we have a network, like I showed the picture across the Earth, that we have a network that's around the moon together, right, in the same way. And so one of the key activities that we're working on right now is obviously developing these cooperating networks, really working together to make sure that we have capabilities that, you know, complement each other, and then working together on agreed upon standards, protocols, interface requirements. This is really tough, not very exciting work, but very, very, very critical for us to agree to and work on. Introducing this early in our missions really will allow us to build upon that and have a robust network as we're moving into the next phases of the period. So the other thing that's very critical is we know that our needs will evolve over time. So we also want to have a set of requirements that we can interface and but also need to be flexible. And so we know that we're going to have an architecture that's going to be pretty simple at the beginning, but when you start looking at that we're maybe be on the moon for the next 15, 20 years, we know that we will have to evolve and be able to add capabilities to be able to deal with potentially, you have a gateway mission, and then you have people moving or working on the moon, and then you also have a couple eclipse landers, and you have a science robotic mission. Well, all of those will need capabilities, and we'll be having to work together on how we make sure that as a network, we can be able to maximize the capabilities and kind of optimize the use together. So, you know, we talked about this before, and then the importance of our role here what you're doing here to make history. So, you know, it's actually pretty amazing today to sit there and think about the fact that we talked about Voyager a lot. We talked about Voyager, and Voyager has now gone farther than any spacecraft ever. And those signals, what was it, 150, was it kilobytes?
150 bits.
Oh, bits, oh gosh, 150 bits. There's this very weak signal. We don't ever want, I think Badri and I would hate it when we don't hear anything anymore, right? But this amazing spacecraft that's been out there since the 70s is still out there phoning home. Still phoning home. And so, and it's here. You know, think about all the data. Think about everything that comes through here. Think about all the science that comes through here. Think about, you know, we just had our laser communication relay demonstration, and that's more of the future. But if you just look at the last 60 years and all the things that have come through the stations here, I mean, you guys, for a lot of people that are in the room, you haven't realized how close you've been to history and the data that you have been part of. You've been maybe, you know, less than for me, I can't do the conversion to kilometers, but less than 100 miles away from this history in the making, right? So, you know, we're going to be getting ready where this network is still an important part of us, and that history will keep on going. And we've got optical communications coming. James Webb is sending signals to us right here, right now. We're going to be seeing this amazing new pictures, and you guys can see that when you see the new James Webb information coming out, or when you see any of the Artemis data coming out, that's coming through Spain. So just realize how really you can see at the top there, it's Madrid, it's Goldstone, and it's Australia, right? But if you see where you are and the contributions you're making, that is what's going on here. So the big takeaway, and this is kind of my get off the stage chart before, and so I'm hoping you guys have some questions for me because I think we've got a little bit more time, is, you know, I'm a firm believer that as a team, we're stronger. As a team, we come up with better solutions. It takes people across the globe. Space is not for one country. Space is for our world. And us figuring out how to work and collaborate and work together in space is critical for us going forward. It doesn't mean it's easier. You know, sometimes it means that it's harder. But I definitely feel like for me, it's better. And I think it's better for my children. I think it's better for my grandchildren and for all the generations to come here on Earth. So I think that's, one more. The next few slides are really, you get to participate in Artemis. You know, I've already told you I'm getting ready to get on a plane tomorrow to go back for the rollout. And so what happens is the vehicle rolls out, it's huge, right? So it goes out on this huge mobile launch platform. It takes about, 13 hours to get all the way out to the pad. They have to do reconfiguration. They have to do configuration, everything else. We'll be doing that wet dress that I talked about end of March. And then we'll be seeing kind of just how things are going with the systems and getting ready for this launch. But you can be part of this launch party. And I hope you'll take me up on this, that, there's a website there. Join, follow along. I have my little launch pad. We have our each of us has a little passport for how we're going to go to the Artemis launch. Next slide. And we really want this to be a worldwide event, right? So I'm not sure what time it'll be in Madrid when we end up launching. It may take a couple of times. You know, I will tell you, just in my experience, first time launches, don't be too frustrated. What's really great about you being in Madrid is you don't have to drive all the way out to the center and then be there for 2 hours. You can be at home, maybe with a glass of wine. If it doesn't go off, it's all good. But it will be phenomenal. And so please participate and be part of this, is a very, very historic event. So thank you. So now I'll take questions. Badri, you don't get to ask any questions. Thank you.
Si queréis hacer alguna pregunta, si queréis hacerla en inglés, perfecto, si no, la
You can ask
traducimos.
Badri questions, though. He's here, too. So.
Levantar la mano, por favor, y sí,
Okay.
el micrófono.
Y allá también hay algo.
Sí,
Allá.
sí, no te preocupes.
Oh, microphone. Sí.
You want to come over here? Can you see them on NASA TV? I don't want to make sure you can see.
No, the person who's going to ask the question.
Yes.
Hi, here. I don't know if you know that Spain is going to create in the next year its own space agency, the Spanish Space Agency, and I wouldn't like to miss the opportunity to ask you maybe you have some advice or recommendation for this newborn agency. Thank you.
So I think it's great. I mean, I think you know, having a focus on the activities, it shows how much things have grown. That now, obviously, it shows then that the government of Spain is making an investment in this particular area, right? That it requires its own focus. I think that just shows how much we've grown together. You know, I think it's very important to realize that you're not going to get it right at the beginning, and you will learn and you'll evolve and we'll work together. But I also think what's going to be important is don't hesitate to reach out to your sister and brother agencies out there for advice and help, right? I mean, we obviously are here, and our ESA folks have worked with us from a NASA perspective, just as our JAXA folks, OSI, and other agencies across the board, you know, across the world together. So I think we're all here to help, but we're also very proud of the fact that the Spanish government is realizing the importance of space and that we need to have a focused effort on space.
Hello. Are manned missions and human operation outside of the Earth now an advantage or a disadvantage due to the economic crisis, the pandemic, or the climate change? We are in the Women's History Month at NASA. Do you think the role of women position at NASA represents the reality of women in science in 2022? It could get better?
I think it always could get better, but that's my very focused, obviously my very focused view. I actually feel like across the board, we need to figure out ways to get just everybody more focused on science and engineering activities going forward, right? I think that's a very, very important thing to do. I do feel like, you know, going through the pandemic, that we've got to realize that there were parts of our organizations and parts of the world that were feeling the effects of it more, and we have to recognize that and then figure out how do we really enable that part of the population to be able to continue to stay engaged with our work going forward. I think this is a continuous activity that we have going forward. I feel like one of my major jobs is as a woman to be here in this position and showing that people can do this, and we need to, each one of us, I feel like my job is to pull 40 women up with me, right? And then when I go out and talk to women in organizations, I'm like, you also, your job is to pull 40 women up. And so I feel like all of us across the board need to be thinking about this as we're going forward. This is going to take, we've spent hundreds of years in a certain social dynamic. It may take us a few hundred years to get out of it, but each one of us can help this. And I feel like that's a very, very important thing. What I love about our mission, and what I love about the women that I see in the astronaut corps and working day to day in the missions that we have, and the women I saw today out at the DSN area, it's like every single one of us is focused on the mission and accomplishing the amazing things that we can do every day, and hoping that that is going to make our life better here on Earth.
Hello. Is there any advice you have for young people or students who are looking into getting to this kind of work, like in the future, where you see the where NASA's going and things like that? Is there certain areas you'd suggest people focus on, or anything like that?
So, Badra and I talk about, we need communication engineers. I mean, we need tons of people. I mean, if you are in the States right now, looking for people in the science and engineering field it's like people are just screaming for them. So I really feel like the more we are doing advancement and the more we are creating these opportunities and creating a commercial industry for people wanting to have the activity, then we're creating job opportunities for people like you that can go and get an engineering field, math and science, anything, a hard science degree, and we'd be able to use you. There really is a dynamic where people need to do that. One of our jobs, though, I'd say, and we need to get better at it, is to do a better job of working with universities and other places to kind of create this environment where we're better able to tap into the talent that's out there as people are going and getting those kinds of degrees. I don't know, Badra, if you want to add something.
Yeah, definitely. My main advice is that not to be afraid of taking on the most challenging activities now, the courses, your other activities, even outside the university environment. You have the opportunity to work hard for the next 4 years, and then you have it made for the rest of your life. Take on the difficult challenges now. In the future, any problem you may encounter will seem so small compared to what you are going through today. But if you take it easy now, for the rest of your life, you are going to struggle, and small problem will be so much amplified. So work hard for these 4 years in college. Pursue the most challenging courses. Ask the questions, and the rest of your life will be kind of made for you. It will be a smooth sailing, I guarantee you. Work hard now. It's easy later on.
I don't know where he's getting the smooth sailing from, but I'll give you maybe a little bit different perspective. I will tell you, when I went to school, I went and first got a BBA in finance, and then I got married, had 2 children, and I realized I really wanted to tackle different kinds of problems.
Mhm.
And so I actually went back and got my engineering degree, and it was really hard. I'm just going to tell you, it was really, really hard. But I do feel like that it was the network of people that I had and the people that I was able to connect with that encouraged me, that really, really helped me out, which is why I kind of focused on each one of us that are in this career, us thinking about how do we pull other people around? How do I look? I look every day at how can I help encourage other people, because I do feel like it's that encouragement sometimes that can get you over a tough time.
And never be afraid of asking the question and to seek advice.
Absolutely. That I learned when I went back to school, I said, you know what, if the professor's there during office hours, I'm camping out. So I learned that older. I was going back to school as an older student.
Well, I have two questions, if it's possible. Yeah, small questions. Well, the first one will be like in a personal, or maybe like for the institution, what will be like the biggest achievement or finding that you are trying or you're targeting with these missions? That would be like one, and at least for the next, I don't know, 20 or 50 years. And the second one will be, how do you think that these findings or achievements will contribute with the like issues and problematics that we are facing on Earth right now? That would be.
So I feel like if we wouldn't have decided to go to the moon, that there are, and through the work that we try to do for shuttle, we wouldn't have had the growth that we've had, even in communications. Like the reason we have these communication networks is because we had the missions, right? I mean, it's through us solving these problems to do the missions that we're bringing technology along. What I tell people all the time is like, give us a crazy mission, and then how we're going to extend human knowledge and be able to apply and develop the things that we need to be able to accomplish them is how then we're going to be furthering humankind. We've learned things in materials that are in your day-to-day projects. I tell people, I wish we would have an ability that for every single product that had a space impact, or that space impacted it, I wish it would change a different color. Because it would mean, and I wish it would be blue, and it would mean that you'd be like walking around and everything was blue. Because of us having to go figure out how to live and work in space, we've had to go figure out new materials. We've had to go figure out how to build new batteries. We had to go figure out how to have new computer systems. We had to go figure out how to do regeneration systems. We had to go figure out how to, I mean, just goes on and on, how to do systems level engineering. It just goes on and on and on, just through us having to have a problem that we couldn't solve, right? Just the things that we're doing on Space Station now with regenerative ecosystems, we've been able to use those to be able to provide water and basic hygiene capabilities in Africa. It's the filtration systems that we've had to develop on station right now. Because you go put somebody in a really, really tough environment like Space Station, that you gotta go solve that problem, guess what? That's a problem that can be applied here on Earth in a really, really tough environment. We right now are working with the Canadian Space Agency on our deep space food challenges. And guess what? Growing food, living and working in space is kind of like being up on, the North Pole or near the North Pole, and having you have a big problem up there with how do I have vegetables? How do I have green things? How do I grow things? And so we're actually working with the Canadian Space Agency on how do we help food nutrition for people that are in these smaller population areas. So I really am firmly believing that with the amount that we're spending now and the fact that we have to go figure out how to solve these problems to live and work in a different environment, it really helps us then. If we can solve that problem there's normally a corollary here on Earth that it helps us solve. And I didn't even get to the Tempur-Pedic beds, right? So I mean, I didn't even bring up that one, but it just constantly, it's been amazing to me as I've been working through in the space program for the last 25, 30 years, how many times after the fact we're here, oh, that happened because of how we work in space. How we deal with, bone loss. Us having 15 years of bone loss in space has just changed how drug companies deal with bone loss here on Earth. It's just having the ability to go take a problem into a different environment and then come up with solutions in that environment helps us come up with new solutions back here on space, back here on Earth.
Another thing is, the age-old question, are we alone in this universe? Are there other entities up there. You know, can we, and we are natural born explorer. We like to break out of our environment to seek knowledge, to conquer a new land. When we got to the river, we crossed the river. When we got to the ocean, we crossed the ocean. We looked up in space, and then we are starting to go there. We are wondering about Mars. Mars used to be a living planet. What happened to Mars? There are so many questions, and getting the answer or some form of knowledge about what happened will help us to better our lives here, on Earth. And we also do, beyond the exploration going into deep space, we also do a lot of Earth science. And the objective of that also to better life on Earth and the living condition on Earth.
But it's a great question, because really, what I tell everybody is we should be pushed on that value, right? Because every single dollar, for us dollars, for you euros, every single dollar or euro, we should be able to defend how that's helping us live here. I actually think they're already here. They're just around us. You just don't see them, Badri, yet. So.
Hi, could you give us an insight of your day-to-day life in NASA, or how you guys work? Something like that.
You mean when she's not beating on us?
Okay, I won't tell you about that part of it. Okay. I think the favorite part of my job, I think one of the favorite part of my jobs is getting to solve problems. Every day is problem solving. I mean, it would be a beautiful thing if your day would go smoothly and everything would be going great. But I think what's really fun about my job is that there's always challenges and there's always things you need to overcome. And so you've got this great team of people that you can go work through and come up with new challenges. And not just challenges from a technical perspective, but challenges from an international perspective, challenges from a legal perspective, from a procurement perspective. It's like all like just really having the ability to work with different teams across the board, different programs, and then be able to really help them with solving their problems and how to get their missions done.
Hi, good afternoon. I would like to ask two questions, if I may. First, because of the Artemis or maybe any other mission program, it is expected to have a permanently base in the moon? And second question, because of the collaboration with other companies like SpaceX or Blue Origin, maybe some others, is it also expected to have at some point space flights for civil people like us? Thank you.
So I think we're trying to figure out, of course, we would like to go and be able to set up an infrastructure that could sustain presence on the moon, right? We are working obviously with international partners because we would like that to be from an international partner perspective. And Jim Free, who's my counterpart in the Exploration Systems Division, is actually working on the architecture and how to optimize what our initial infrastructure requirements are and then what that means long term. We have to balance, and for the first time, what's very exciting about how we're going back to the moon now is there are these other companies that are also talking about going back to the moon or going to Mars. And I talked a little bit about our CLIPS folks, our lunar, our landers that are coming, the astrobiologics folks, the intuitive machines folks. I mean, we have other companies that are now also wanting to go and work on the moon. And so we have to be flexible. We have to not have this be just what we want to do for just our specific mission, but how do we work with them and collaborate so we optimize maybe what the government's providing and then honestly, our international partners may have other gains or other, goals that they want to accomplish too. And so we are right now trying to really work this out and have an architecture that's flexible, that lays the groundwork for people to be able to stay there, for us potentially to be able to stay there. But we also want to make sure that we're just not staying there and never going anywhere else. And so what's really good about this is we don't have all the answers right now. It's 2022. And so one of the things we're trying to figure out is how do we lay this groundwork so that we enable lots of outcomes based on what's going to happen over the next 10, 15, 20 years. And then what I always tell everybody is that's the future my grandchildren may be having, right? So I actually think it'd be really, really cool to have one day people going to the moon and working and living on the moon and setting things up. And we'll need to solve some of those problems that we talked about before, right? And we'll have to be ready to solve some of those problems for us to be able to engage and be able to go do that. But I think that would be really cool if we could go do that. And the more people going and trying to solve those problems, the better for us. So it's a very exciting time now that it's not just NASA doing it, but there's lots of other people that are actually really engaged and wanting to go do this right now.
Hi. I wanted to ask, how does NASA decide where they want to go? And if you're doing Earth observation or more unmanned missions, or why Mars and not Venus? Or how do you decide where to put the money and the minds?
That's a really good question. We have lots of advisor groups. We have a science decadal group that helps us with things. We have multiple other organizations that helps us with, along with, honestly, the White House and our Congress and our international partners. And so, we are really implementers for other people's missions, I would say, in a lot of cases. And so that one of our jobs is to go and make sure that we're kind of laying the groundwork and working with these different areas to be able to go implement them. Sometimes it's hard because they can be getting in debates and it takes a little while for people to be able to figure out exactly where they need to go. But what's really good right now is that there's a pretty clear understanding that we should be going to the moon to really figure out how to operate around the moon first before we try to go to another planet. Mars is still the best planet right now because Venus is just a pretty horrific place for a human person to go right now, with the technical limitations that we have and the knowledge we have right now. But there could be some groundbreaking, knowledge that's gained that may make a different place somewhere different. If somebody can really do something groundbreaking about transportation, that would be a really, really great idea for us right now. Everyone needs to be thinking, when you're talking about how do you get into this, I tell people, I go, you may not realize you're a space person, but sometimes the greatest ideas come from non-engineers, right? And going, why can't you do that, right? And so it does make you go, well, why didn't we think about that a little bit?
And you have two components. You have the robotic missions that we do explore. We send to different places around the planet, and NASA has visited all of the entire planetary systems. And you have the human space flight. So definitely we rely a lot on the robotic mission that bring the kind of science and deciding where the human should go.
Yeah, I always tell Thomas, Thomas Ubukin, I go, it's bots first, boots next. So he always goes, because we got to learn about the environments we're going in. From an engineering solution perspective, you got to understand what's the environment you need to design to. And so when he's sending out, he's really collecting data. It's another key place of data for us to be able to go understand what is the environment, what are the limitations that we have for us to be able to design the systems we need to be living and working in.
Yes, so you have been mentioning out how the most important part of space You have been mentioning how the most important part of the space missions is the data, but what data exactly is the one you are looking for?
Well, you know, it's funny because I just had this discussion today with the U.S. ambassador to Spain, and she said, "You keep saying data," and she's a lawyer, and she goes, "I view it as evidence." So really for us, it's about learning as much as we can, like I talked about with the area, like just understanding anything we can about the area, right? And I liked the way she said that about evidence. Any one of you guys watch any of those CSI shows? I don't know if they really actually do all that when they have a murder, but if you notice, like if you really go watch one of those detective shows, they are really collecting all kinds of data about everything to be able to go solve the problem, which is who killed this person or who did this. We're really trying to collect the data to be able to understand as much about that particular location as possible so that we can better understand it and for us from a human knowledge perspective. And so depending on the kind of instrument it is, it can normally the type of instrument it is kind of targeted to a particular kind of data. And so you know, we may say we need to understand, you know, microgravity differently, or we may need to understand, you know, this part of the atomic structure, or we, you know, you just see some, you know, Perseverance amazing with all the video and collecting soil data and everything else. I mean, really, there's no data. I mean, data, just getting as much of it as possible is just giving us information on where we are going, we could be going, and also bottom line, giving us more information about that part of the universe that we didn't have before. You know, we have all these questions that Badri talked about. We have all these questions about how did we get here? Really, how do we like know? I mean, we're still trying to prove different Big Bang theory or like how, you know, how are we really here? And so we're continuing to do is to collect data out there about this universe to say, are some of the theories that we had real? And then what does that mean for here on Earth, right? So we're just trying to suck it all in as much as we can and then make sure that we can use that. And then honestly, I think the other big thing, and the Science Mission Directorate has been fantastic about it too, is we are trying to share that data with everybody. We have this with all of our consortiums to be able to just give the data to everybody. It's really cool right now. If you go on some of the Science Mission Directorate portals, they actually have, and you can see pictures where they're also eliciting help from citizens to be able to go help us analyzing the data, because in some cases we're getting so much data we need help. And so you can see, you know, picture, and it'll say JPL, it'll say, you know, NASA, and it'll say citizen scientist, you know, somebody that's helped us with understanding the data. So we need help with people helping us decompose and understand the data out there, because we're just trying to get as much of it in as we can.
And as Kathy said, instruments, what do the instruments do? The instruments, they go to a place, they sense their environment, and depending on what kind of instrument, they either look at the electromagnetic property of whatever they encounter over there, or probably they look at the gravitational forces or anything that the scientist wants to look at. Then you collect all of the data coming from these science instruments, and then you can formulate an idea about the place where you collected the data.
Yeah, we act like we know how everything works, but we're still learning a lot. Yep. We're learning a lot.
Hi, over here. I don't know if you can see me or not.
I don't know. We're...
Back here?
Oh, back
here. Oh, yeah,
okay.
we see you.
Sorry.
So I have two quick questions. The first one is, what would you say any space agencies right now biggest challenge is? And the second one is, what would you say, whether it's a technology or a discovery, would be the biggest groundbreaking discovery or technology for, you know, down the road, maybe 100, 200 years down the road, that this generation is working on?
Well, I think our big challenge is, honestly, there's lots of priorities that we have out there. And we all understand that. We understand that every government's got priorities and what they need to do and the funding that they have available. We understand people have things that they need to do here on Earth and real problems that we need to solve here on Earth. And then we need to make sure that what's invested in us is that we're giving kind of the biggest bang back to our investors. I kind of view it as our investors, to be able to further and solve the problems that we have going forward. I think our big challenge is making sure that we continue to be able to have the relationships with our international partners and continue to work together despite the challenges that we are having here on Earth. I think that's a big challenge. You know, we still are held, even though the cost of launch and transportation has gone down considerably in the last 10 years. Man, it would be great. I keep waiting for somebody to build me a beam me up.
We'll do that.
I know. Okay, so I mean, you know, it'd be really good to be able to. I wish it didn't take, you know, 9-10 months to get to Mars, right? I mean, I think there's some of these things. It would be really good to, you know, be able to, I think Stanley Kubrick in 2001, we can go work that whole flywheel concept and be able to create 1G, you know, so that I wouldn't have to be so worried about crew health all the time. That would be a great thing. I think, you know, Badri, we're continuing to look at some really cool things, advancement in optical and then quantum. I think quantum communications is like going to be like a game changer. We go figure out how to solve some of those problems. But I also think the same problems like green propellants, you know, being able to live and work and figuring out ways to live and work in space in a way that leaves a smaller footprint is also going to be a real challenge for us and important for us. And in the same way, we'll learn probably how to do that here on Earth. So I don't know, Badri, anything else that you have?
You touched on them, Kathy. I'd like to encourage you to go further into the physics. You know, in the past we used to have a problem that the technology that we had, you know, was limited. We couldn't demonstrate some of the the physical theories. Now we think we can. So we are scratching the surface now on the quantum domain, not just from a COM perspective, but quantum sensing, quantum computing, quantum everything. I believe if we consider the 2020s as the decade of light, the age of lasers, we look at the 2030s as the decade of quantum, getting into what made this universe what it is now. Really, you know, if you are interested in, you know, pushing the edge in your research and your knowledge, go in this direction. This is the future.
Bueno, thank you very much. We'll give you then an applause, please. Thank you, Catherine.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Badri.
Thank you all.
It was a pleasure for us to be you here, and hopefully you'll be back here in Spain again sometime. And very soon.
I come usually once or twice. COVID prevented me from coming here, but I've given presentation here at the.
Yes, I remember that. I remember that.
And hopefully the next time I will go into science. All of the science we study, from near Earth all the way to the helioscience, to deep space, you know, and the calm.
Amazing stuff.
Yeah, yep. It's incredible the kind of things we do in addition to the human exploration. You know, we demonstrate everything through science and robotic mission, but you only get to believe it when you have someone on the ground.
Yeah.
When you be back?
Huh?
When you be back here?
We're gonna tie you down. Here he goes.
My guy is over there.
Oh,
He
no,
has
no,
my
no, no,
my
no, no.
itinerary, my schedule, and he can
I
decide
think
for
you're
me.
being filmed. So
Good
there you
morning.
go, Baji.
Okay, thank you very much. to
No,
all.
but please have her back here. She's the one who's leading
Yes, both of you.
not
are-
only SOMD, but also major part of the Artemis program, moving us into the future. You know.
Both of you are welcome to come back here. And thank you very much to all.
Thank you.
So bye-bye and applause.
Thank you.